Dear all, sorry for my lateness in posting this video clip. At this point, we come to the end of this class and I need to reconceptualize everything we have been studying after midterm examination, and I will talk about every short stories we have been studied together through my video clips. After our midterm examination, we begin with the Singaporean short stories, and afterwards we go to Malaysian short story, and at the end of the course we come to Indonesian short story. At this point, I will discuss about the Singaporean short story first. In Singaporean short story topics includes Deadline for a Short Story, Belja, and AP Value. These three short stories came from Catherine Lim, who is English Singaporean writer. I mean the Singaporean writer who wrote in English, and most of them were Peranakan writers. Peranakan group was the descendants from the South China people who get married with the local people around Malaysia and Singapore, and so their descendants were born as Peranakan group, and they were called Peranakan because it means born locally. Born locally means the descendants of the Chinese people who born around the Strait settlements, which are Malaysia and Singapore. At this point, the Peranakan group always sent their children and their descendants to the English educational system school. That's why the Peranakan group were the first group who wrote in English in Singapore literary circumstance, and they produced a lot of English works. And Catherine Lim is the Sea Right Awarded writer who is very famous because of her short story criticized Singaporean society. In her short story Deadline for Earth, discusses about gender inequality, especially the LGBTQ limitation in the perception of the Singaporean society. Since Singaporean or the state itself defined the family meaning, which means only one man plus one woman. And how about the other types of families, such as the homosexual family, man married man, women married women? It is the narrow meaning of the family, and it's very over control to the families producing in Singapore. The state itself allowed only men get married with women. And how about men who wants to get married with men and women who wants to get married with women? Because of this over controlling, Agnes, the main characters, married ends up marrying a gay man because the states control them and didn't provide any choice for them to buy the HDB house or the Housing Development Board, the house subsidized by the government. And the state itself didn't allow men or women to stay single and cut off their rights to buy a house, and it's not fair for the main character, and that's why, because of this political issue, drove her to the sad ending, staying with two gay men. And the Confucianism, in this at this point, Confucianism influenced a lot for the Singaporean characters, especially the female characters, because of the ideal women role drive them to be getting married to some men. At this point, they were afraid of staying as a wallflower. No one picked them or chose them. The Confucianism included the ideal women role because it's order or assign women how to behave. When they were young, they have to be a good daughter, and when they grow up, they have to find a man and get married to him. And afterwards, she have to be a good mother. And after her husband died or some accidents, she have to be a possession under her son. women are protected all over her life, and they have to serve all parents' needs, male needs, and their own child's needs. And it's a female trap because when women believe in Confucianism, they try hard to commit this mission of getting married, of being a good housewife, and of being a good mother. So women were blamed when they were sterilized, they can't produce a child, or when they can't behave as a good housewife, and they have to manage everything in the household. And in this short story, Dead Life for Love, you see the competitions among women, especially the competition between Agnes and her friend Fiona. They fight a lot in finding a true man first and fighting who will get married first. So Agnes didn't use her brain in choosing a man to marry with because she just wanted to get married as soon as possible in order to compete with Fiona. In political issue, in that Life for Love short story, you will see the program or the strategy of the Singaporean government for matchmaking. They want to matchmaking and increase the population. So they try to matchmaking and control the men and women in their society to meet each other and get married as soon as possible. If they want to buy a HDB house, the Housing Development Board subsidized by the Singaporean government. If they want to buy a house, they have to get married. So it's arouse people not use brain, not use heart, but they use only their brain, thinking about buying a house and live outside their parents' house. So if they want to buy a house as soon as possible, they have to get married very soon without thinking a lot about their own behaving, their own emotions, they can live together or not, but they just want to get married as soon as possible, and it's led to the social problem and led to the divorces among young generations. So the HDB house strategy for matchmaking didn't work, and it also increased the social problem, especially the family problems. And the birth controlling, you see that in the Singaporeans literature background, we already know that the state's governments even control the birth rates of their population. Sometimes they want to control the birth rates and sometimes they want to increase the birth rates. When they want to increase the birth rates, they arouse men and women to get married and produce a child. But in the Dead Life for Love short story, you will see that the kinds of Agnes family won't produce any child to the states. So it is how the writer criticized the HDB house buying for arousing men and women to get married. It didn't work at all because if anyone chooses to marry with a gay man, they won't produce a child as the state wants. The stage matchmaking program with this way is also failed, and you will see the media censorship in the newspaper which Agnes worked for because Agnes want to criticize this kind of government strategy of buying the HDB house only for the married couple, but she can't. She was prohibited by her own chief editor because the strong media censorship of Singapore. You can't criticize the government. After you are criticizing the government, you will be banned and even exiled from your workplace. Let's move on. In the next story, Beljar. Can you remember the story of Beljar? It's the story of one woman whose name is Mona. And what happened to Mona? She gets married and she has two children and a cute dog. And she have to serve everyone in her family. Everyone call her to serve their own needs. Even the dog also bark for her to take him to the pet hospital. At this point, it shows us how modern Singaporean women live their own life. They live their own life among the expectations from the society and from the family. The strong effects of social expectation on women has been discussed in this short story. Singaporean women are pulled between Eastern culture and their Western education and thoughts. What's about the Eastern culture? I actually means the Confucianism effect on her because most of Singaporean women are Chinese descendants and they were living their life among the Eastern culture, especially the Chinese culture and Confucianism. Their ancestor expects on them to be a good housewife and a perfect mother. Why their own Western education? Because most of them study in the English educational system and they even have an English name. With the Western education, they shape their thoughts towards Western women's and they want to live the lifestyle of Western women's and they sometimes feel irritated with the role of Eastern women but they can't deny it. And it's kind of belja. Actually belja or the glasses to cover up something. It means the strong effects of social expectation on women is trapped, is bind, and it covers women in their own powerful glasses. Gender inequality in this short story. You will see that women have to serve their family. Women have to serve male needs. Mona, the main character, serves her husband on beds, and she even checklists of her husband why he get married with her. It's not about love and passion, but it's about benefits because he want to have a children because he want to serve his family's needs, because he want to get married, don't want to stay single, because he can't stand the social judgment, and that's why they live together. It's not about love and passion, it's about brains, it's about thinking hard of the social expectation and social judgment. They want to avoid social judgment of staying single, so they put themselves together in this house without love and passion. The expectation on females' role means belja because you will see from you can see from our main character Mona's life. She living with the works expectation and the family's expectation. At work, she working for a company or organization, and the organization expect her of being a good labor of the organization. Whilst when she come back to the family, she was expect to be a perfect housewife and to serve all the household. The expectation on Singaporean females roles such as the first thing they have to work for a company effectively. Next thing she have to support the state's economics because even they were women, but they are the power, they are the labor of the states and they need to drive the economics power of the society. They have to take care of the household effectively. They have to be a perfect daughter-in-law, perfect housewife, and perfect mother. They have to be a good labor and a good housewife at the same time. And this is why Agnes want to avoid to escape from this tight bell jar because she have to be a good labor and she has no space for herself. She was pulled between the household and organization. She have to be a perfect daughter-in-law, the perfect wife, the perfect mother, because it's related with the ideal women role in Confucianism beliefs, the female impossible dream. In this short story, Belja show us the female impossible dream. Impossible of what? Impossibility of staying in freedom. The impossible for doing what they really want, because they was trapped tightly in the bell jar of the social judgment. They can't be free because only way for Mona to be free is when she was out of the country, when she joined or attended the conference in Canada. Is the free space for her, free from the family, free from Confucianism ideal, and free from the social expectation in Singapore. And you will see that the conference in Canada means vacation love affair with a foreign man. It's the impossible dream of Singaporean females, and it shows us the fantasy because she was irritated and feel very and feel bored with kinds of serving her family needs. She wants to get out of this Belja from Confucianism, and she wants to meet with the men who come from foreign culture, come from anything except Confucianism. That's why she dated with a foreign Western man, because he free from Confucianism effect, and she hoped that she can live with this kind of man. But actually she rejected this relationship because she was afraid of being blamed by the society of leaving her own family with the foreigners. Come to our third short story in Singaporean short stories. It's about the AP value characters. At this point, AP value is the Tamil Indian in Singapore character. As I told you in the Singaporeans literature background, the Tamil Indian people also one of the racial group in Singapore society, and the state's governments even promoted the multiracial society of Singapore. They want their citizens to live among this diversity peacefully. They want their citizens to live together and love being together, and they try to support their multiracial society as the uniqueness of Singapore. But actually, in AP Value short story reveals the bias among different racial groups, you will see that the Chinese mother prevented her own child to play with AP Value, who is the Tamil Indian, and it and the Tamil Indian status in Singapore are marginalized and inferior in the society because most of Tamil Indian in Singapore were labor, and they work as the lower labor class, and Tamil Indian are looked down and blamed of committing a crime first before the Chinese group. They were blamed for committing everything wrong, while the Chinese always the right one. So this shows us the differentiate between the racial groups in the Singapore society and the hierarchy and inferiority of Tamil Indian people group. So this AP value short story also show us the political problems, especially the newspaper censorship. You see that because of AP value realized how the state's government didn't work, so he tried to criticize what's wrong the government's committed, and he tried to criticize the government in his letter and sent it to the national newspaper, the Straits Times, and most of his letters were rejected by the newspaper because of the strong media censorship of Singapore. They didn't allow AP Value to criticize the government, and because of his letters were wrongs in grammar, were wrong in grammatical way, so they prevented his letters and rejected it. So it shows us that lower class people are voiceless and governments never heard them. The non-democratic country, as A.P. Valu criticized the states in his letters and in the short story. He criticized that Singapore is not a real democratic country and it tend to be non-democratic country because they never listen to people's voice and try to prevent people from voicing their own needs and what they found out about the government's work. The state's HDB house or Housing Development Board at that time it's want to create the multiracial living together program because they want everyone in Singapore live together peacefully. So they try to control the quota of buying the HDB house in one building. It have to be many racial groups such as Chinese buy 2 rooms, Tamil Malaysians buy 2 rooms, Malay racial group buy 2 rooms, and then in one building contain the Malay Chinese and the Tamil Indian. So it's a kind of practicing of living together harmoniously. And the states wants this kind of building to imitate the bigger Singaporean society to represent the Singaporean society. If they can live together in one building, they can live in the same society also. Is the government's thoughts, but actually in this short story it shows us that this strategy was truly failed. The state's policy of being polite to each other didn't work. It is the slogan of being courtesy in the Singaporean society. It was promoted at that time because the government wants to arouse young generation to be polite to the senior generation. And you will see from this short story when AP Value went to the kinds of the post stations. When he come to the post office, the young officer didn't respect in him, and it not because of he is a senior, but actually because he was poor Tamil Indian man, and his appearance was not good. He has dark skin with the red eyes and with the crippled legs, so the young officers looked down on him. So it shows us that the state's policy of being polite to each other or being courtesy is not work at all. The colonialism experience. AP Values always mentioned that once he worked for the English military, maybe in the colonial periods. He said that he worked with the with the English captain, and he truly obsessed with this captain typewriter, the novel, English novel the captain left to him. He obsessed with the colonizer culture, especially language, literature, and lifestyle of the captain, and it shows us the internal colonization because he truly admired everything from the Western country. The colonizer don't recognize that they are under the colonizer's cultural influence, the same as AP Value truly admired the captain, the English captain, with his wholeheartedly, and he even imagined that he was superior to other Singaporean because once he worked with the English, and he even fancied that English colonizer accepted him as one of his colleagues and one of his kinds of officer. And this is the effects of colonialism experience in the Tamil Indian group through AP values character. Next, the issue of educational system. In English educational system in Singapore, we already know that because of the colonialism, English colonizer gave Singapore the English educational system, and Singaporean people agree with the English educational system. They have to take the GCE O-level exam from Cambridge University in England, and it shows us that language divided classes in Singapore. The middle class to upper middle class are educated in English system, while the lower class, sometimes uneducated or educated in their own dialects, such as Chinese educated Singaporeans or Tamil educated Tamil Singaporeans. So the superior class, absolutely English educated people. Speaking grammatically good English is used in dividing social classes. Upper class or lower class will be divided to their good English. You can see from the AP's value nephew. AP value admired his own nephews a lot because he passed the GCE O-level exam and he speaks good grammatical English, while his own nephew rejected him and rejected replying his letters because he can't stand with his uncle wrong in grammatical English. So it shows us they divided each other to the good in using English. If you use bad English, you are come from different classes. Maybe you come from the lower class. Let's move to the Malaysian short story. The next country we come to is Singaporean short story. In Singaporean again, I'm sorry, is Malaysian short story. At this point in Malaysian short story, we also study three short story, Maria, Rani's Taxis Away, and Neighbor. What happened to this short story? Maria, can you remember the story of Maria? It's the story of a woman named Maria who is the center of attention from the male in the community, and especially the imam, the religious leader in the community, want to get married with Maria and want to ask his wife how can he ask for a second wife, and finally his wife allowed him to have Maria as a second wife. How it is portrayed as the social issue. First, the gender inequality in Islamic family. You will see from the status of the imam himself in the family and his wife Sikyam. Let's see, women have to serve men. In the Islamic community, every wife compete each other in cooking for their men, and they believe that their cooking is the best for their men. The perfect housewife, they have to manage the household perfectly, as the description when the writer describes about the imam's house and see how perfect Chikyam is to manage the household. And everything, they believe that everything in the story happens for God's will. Islamic gods names Allah. When anything happens to them, they always say that it happens because of Allah's will, and women are obstacle for men. Imam himself, as the religious leader, finally he ends up asking for a second wife because he can't stop his own passion on Maria. Women are obstacle for men in the believing of of him because he said that this woman was a test from the heaven, a test from God to test his passion. But finally he ended up can't stopping, can't rejecting this passion on Maria. Men can do what they really want while women can't. You see that Jack Yam didn't have a choice for her own, but she had to follow her husband unconditionally. Islamic housewives are serious with their housewife duty, especially cooking, and Chekyams always blame herself of not being a good housewife, and thus lead her husband to ask for a second wife. But we as the reader see that actually she is the perfect housewife, but it's because her husband only wants to have a second wife. It's not her failures, it's not her faults at all, but they will blame themselves first. Women always judge each other because of their jealousy with women who can obtain most of males' attention. At first in the story, the females in this community gossip about Maria and thought that she even used the magic in her cooking to lure to persuade their husband to to ignore the meals at the house and join at her stalled instead of eating their wife meals. Women can't reject male needs. What men want, they have to get it. Why women have to prevent her own sadness, like Jack Yam allows the Imam to ask for a second wife. And you see that the status of women in Islamic family, they were overprotected. They can't live or stay single for long or stay alone for a long time, such as the character of Maria. After her husband was dead, she stayed single and sold the breakfast in her small stall. But actually, she can't be like that for a long time. These short stories show us that women who stay single or living without a husband will be the center of male attention, and it is dangerous and dangerous for gossiping also. So they have to get married and to have one man to protect them. Let's move on. I want to show you from this poster in Islamic teaching memes. It is in Islam, a woman is considered as a homemaker. She is not considered as housewife because she is not married to the house. It talk about the role of Islamic women in the household. They try to tell us that in Islamic beliefs or Islamic society, they admire and support women as the queen of the house who who is the maker of home. She is not a housewife who just keep doing the housework, but she is the queen in the house to show the acceptance of the female role in Islamic beliefs. The prophets Baruch Pabu said, when a husband and wife look at each other with love, Allah look at them with mercy. At this point, you will see that they always believe that in Islamic country or community, even everything happens for Allah's will, and even the couples was look and take good care from Allah, so they can't divorce even their husband make them feel sad, like Chekyam. When the Imam asks for a second wife, she can't divorce with him, but she has to allow him to protect their marriage as they can't divorce because they're afraid that God look at them and God protected their marriage also. Let's move to the next story. It's about Tamil Indian female character whose name is Rani. in Rani's taxis away, the same as Singaporean society. In Malaysians, there are Tamil Indian groups because in the colonized periods, the English colonizer brought a lot of laborers from Indians there and other colonies, and they brought the Indians' ancestors into the straight settlements of Singapore and Malaysia, and afterwards their descendants were born locally in these parts of Southeast Asian country. The Rani's Taxiways is the story of the Tamil Indian family in Malaysia. Women are overprotected from the parents because Rani can't even get on the bus in public, but she have to but her parents hired a private taxis to drive her to the school and then drove her back to the house because she starts working as a school teacher. The modern English educated Tamil women is a upper middle class and can work publicly, different from their mother generation. Like Rani was always proud of herself as a worker instead of being a schoolgirl. They can work while her mother have to stay at home and doing housekeeping. Strong social classes division. You see that even Rani's families and her aunts always looked down on and divided their class from the taxi drivers. They are upper class Tamil, and the taxi driver are the lower class. The power of gossiping can change women's life because of this social monitoring. The situation happens when Rani was driven home by the private taxi driver, and at that time the private taxi driver want to buy a cake for their house, for his parents, and Rani asked him can she go with him, and they joined at the desserts restaurant. But finally, one of her relatives see and then gossip of her going out of the way, and she was buying a cake with a lower class taxi driver. And because of this gossiping can change Rani's life, maybe her parents stop her from working outside or stop her from the private taxi hiring. But it is because of the strong gossiping in the society changed Rani's mother's life before. We can imagine or we can imply that maybe because of her mother were gossiped by someone else, she had to get married to Rani's dad. The rebellious modern Tamil women who tries to break the norms and females' fearfulness is Rani. Rani is our main character. They didn't believe and they didn't care in the social monitoring and the gossiping from her relatives. She cares only the working outside. She cares for the equality amongst people. She didn't look down on the taxi driver and she want to break the old norm. She said that she is a bird and she can fly freely, while her mother generation was a tree who rooted deep inside and they can't change themselves, but she never feared of anything and she will fly freely. So she wants to destroy the social class and gender division because at the end of the story, Rani's even jumped to the front seat and sitting beside the man who was not her family member and a lower class taxi driver. Let's move on to the next short story, Neighbors. This neighbor is the story of the Dato and Datin, who are the rich family in the Kuala Lumpur society, the modern rich Malaysians who have free time and who have many money. She didn't have anything to entertain himself to entertain himself or herself except monitoring the privacy of someone else. The multisexuality and LGBTQ, the gender diversity was discussed in this short story, and it shows us the narrow perception in Islamic conservative community because the Datin Sarina even shocked when she realized that the wife of her neighbor, her handsome neighbor, was a transgender woman. The invasion to the other's privacy is the main issue of this short story because we have no right to intrude into other people's privacy, but the Datin Sarina allowed herself to invade in other people's stories, and she even try hard to entertain herself by looking at other people's lifestyle, and she is the kind of the parasite who feeds itself with neighbor's story instead of concentrating their own business. And it shows us the power of gossiping because the power of gossiping is very strong. You can see that the Datin Sarina character always gossip with her community, and she always phoning her friends for the gossiping the news story of the people she met in the community. And because she was too free to concentrate on her own business, and it shows us the life of the rich Islamic housewife who keep entertaining herself with someone else's story, but actually she was ignored by her own husband and her own children. The transgender women in Islamic community is quite exotic, kinds of exotic issue because you will see how that in Sarina is surprised with the transgender women, and it shows us that the LGBTQ perception in the Malaysian society is still narrowed. Islamic teaching interpretation depends on each person. This issue is the topic discussed with the Dato, the husband of the Datin Sarina. He discussed with his neighbor about the Islamic teaching interpretation. He said that anyone can interpret Islamic teaching, depends on their own definitions. And one of Islamic teaching is to concentrate your business and not involving in others people's business, which is contrast with the Datin Sarina behaving, and the destruction or the failed at the ending of the story of Datin Sarina is related to this Islamic teaching of not involving in others people's business. Just concentrate on your own issue. People judge each other with their appearance. You will see that when Datin Sarina found out that her neighbor was rich and her neighbor was too handsome, she started fancying that they are a good couple, they are a rich neighbors of her, they will be a good people, they will be luxurious, but actually she judged them because of their appearance and their taste and their materials, but not that's why she can't accept the truth of their exotic sex behaving or exotic sexual preference, but actually it's not her business. So this is the quite modern new issue to discuss in Malaysians rich modern society, which people try to intrude and invade into others people's privacy. The Indonesian short story is the last part in this course. The first short story actually it is very short, and it is short in their plot and the subplot story. This short story named Damned I lost my shoes in the mosque. Actually, let's see, this is the six pillars of faith in Islamic belief. The first thing is belief in gods. That's why, if we understand these six pillars of faith, we will understand that why they always say that everything happens for Allah's will. Belief in gods, belief in angels, belief in God's revealed book, belief in the messengers of God, belief in the days of judgment, belief in the predestination. You will see that in the short story of Maria, because Yam, who is the Imam's wife, she is the perfect housewife, so she was believed that in the day of judgment, when all human beings in this world were judged, she will be under the protected of the angel, the Siti Fatima angel, who is the prophet's daughter. And everyone in the Islamic community believes in the powers of gods. Indonesians also the Islamic country, and there's the strong belief in Islamic teachings. The Islamic beliefs in the gods is the main theme in this Damn I Lost My Shoes in the Mosque. It's not it's not complicated, and it's quite easy reading short story because everything happens for God's will is the main theme again, because the man in this short story believes that God protects his life because he lost his shoe in the mosque, because he wants to pray in the Friday praying, and and it's his very strong will, strong intention. When he wants to pray for God, that's why he lost his shoe. And when he lost his shoe, he didn't lose his life because his employer wants him to assist him to the Borobudur famous tourist place in Indonesia. So he, because of his losing his shoe, and because he tried hard to attend the Friday praying in the mosque, he let his employer go out alone, go to Borobudur alone with his family, and they end up with the car crashing. And he is the only one who survived from this situation because he tried to find his shoes, and he just drive back home, drive to the office, pass each other with the employer. And finally, the employer can't stand this situation, and he decided to go with his family without this man, whose name is Ran, the main character. And finally, it ended up that Ran is the only survivor from this car accident because he lost his shoes in the mosque. He not lose his life, and he truly believed that because he attended Friday praying, because he believed in God, and everything happens for God's will, and God wants to protect his life. And it is the short story to show us how Indonesia is the strong Islamic country. The next short story is quite very modern is too, and and composed by very famous female writer in Indonesia, Lee the Resteri, who once is an Indonesian singer. She composed this Searching for Her Man short story to criticize and discuss about the LGBTQ perception of Indonesian citizens. It's the issue of LGBTQ about a girl or a woman who is telling the readers that she is searching for her man, for her close friend's name Hera, and they try hard to searching for Herman all of their life. At the end of the story, Hera ended up she was killed by the thief who persuaded her that he is Mr. Herman. And Searching for Herman discuss about LGBTQ issue, and women can't reveal their true sexual preference but cover it up with a non-related story. Actually, our main character who is telling us the story and Hera fell in love with each other since they were young, but they can't reveal their true feeling to each other because they were afraid of the social judgment. And our main character prevent her feeling by getting married with a man and have a child, and she protect her privacy of being a good housewife instead of revealing that she is a homosexual in Islamic Indonesian country. So she tried to cover her true feeling up by saying about searching Herman, which is quite weird and very absurd activity. It's not related to the daily life of people, but she just say that she needs to contact with Hera because she and Hera want to find a Herman together, some man whose name is Herman in their community. But actually, they just want to stay together. They just want to do some activities together, and they just refer to searching a Herman. She is actually our main character. She isn't searching for Herman, but she is searching for her true sexual identity. She wants to live with Hera, but she can't accept herself. It's the same situation like we is we are finding someone who is not exists in this world for all our life. It's the same as we try to find ourselves but we can't accept our true self. It's the same as finding the non-existing things. The victim of the social judgment, you see that this society can't accept the homosexuality, and that's why Hera and the main character have to protect themselves under the story of searching for Herman. Islamic women have to conserve their marriage and housewife duty. Women are victims of social judgment. At this point, you will see that Hera was blamed by the society for the first time because be, she gets pregnant without husband, and afterwards she is a homosexual. And afterwards, when she was a flight attendant, she was a second wife of the captain. And finally, she was sterile, she can't produce a child, and she was divorced with the captain. Everything, she was a victim of the social judgment. And finally, the main character Hera ended up were killed by a man who was a thief and lied to her that he is Mr. Herman because this thief know that Hera's obsession is about finding a man named Herman, but actually, it's not. It's not the true main idea of her life. But the main idea of her life is try hard to accept her homosexuality and staying with her lover. But it is impossible, and Hera was killed. The the end of the main character Hera. Why Hera was killed? It represents the LGBTQ issue, and you can see that the society, the Indonesian strong Islamic society, can't accept the homosexuality, and it's the author's judgment to kill this character in this short story. So, the issues discussed after midterm examinations are gender inequality, the bias among multiracial society, the gender diversity, LGBTQ, the social class hierarchy, the social expectations on women, and the religious beliefs. Most of them are Islamic beliefs and the Confucianism in Singapore. It's because of these religious beliefs, its effects on women. The final examination will be 35 points because of what? Since I stopped assigning the works for you, so we have another 35 points to obtain. So I have to put this final examination for 35 points. The first question will be 10 points, the second question for 10 points, and the last question for 15 points. And the exam will be launched on the date 30 at night and ended on the date 1st at 16 p.m. in the afternoon. The exam questions will be related with the issues we discussed and mentioned on our every video clips, and you need to support the issue with the short stories, any related short story, as much as you can. For example, I selected the topic of gender inequality, and when I want to describe and explain about gender inequality in Southeast Asian literature, I will choose the short story Maraya and Belja in describing this issue. And please remember that in your descriptions and explanation in each question, please exemplify some dialogues, conversations, paragraphs from the short stories to make strong arguments on the topic, such as when I discuss about gender inequality topics and I choose Maraya, and I will exemplify the conversation of the character in Maraya related to this gender inequality topic in order to show the strong supporting arguments. And I hope that you can do the final examination in details, and all the exams questions will be derived from all the story we have been studying after midterm examination. Okay, so I wish you guys very best and wish you guys very good luck in your final examinations, and maybe see you in the next video clip. If not, see you on the examination dates. Thank you for your concentration. Bye.